Good morning. You're listening to FloorDaily.net, and I'm Kemp Harr. This morning, my guest is Dan Natkin, who's Director of Hardwood and Laminate for Mannington Mills. Dan, how you doing?
Great, Kemp. How are you doing?
Good to be with you. I follow you a little bit on Facebook and see that you've been on a road trip for vacation with your family, and I believe you went to Niagara Falls, didn't you?
That's right. Nothing like taking 1,000 miles in the car with a couple of young kids, but we had a great time.
Yeah, I remember going to Niagara Falls. And did you go down on that boat that goes down at the bottom where you get sprayed?
Yep, we went on both sides of the falls, both the New York and Canadian side, and did the Maid of the Mist and all the other tourist traps there.
All right, well, that'll be memories that your kids will have forever. All right, so let's get into the business. I wanted to talk to you because of this Department of Commerce and Department of Justice around this whole engineered hardwood. We'll get to that in just a minute, but first a little bit background on you. You've been at Mannington Mills now for, about 4 years, is that right?
No, it's hard to believe, but it's almost 7 years now.
7 years, okay. And I know you were at Armstrong prior to that, so you've been focused in this area for a while. I know you live there in South Jersey, just near Philadelphia. First, let's start with just business conditions. How is Mannington's hardwood business doing?
You know, it's continuing to improve. Business is good. It's improving. We're facing some raw material headwinds continuously. It's an interesting time in the economy, but it's nice to be going up and not down.
A majority of what you sell actually at Mannington is engineered, right?
Yeah, 100% of our wood line is engineered hardwood.
All right, so this is somewhat pivotal to your business, and I know you're an expert in this area. So the action is, recently we heard that the Department of Justice has asked the Department of Commerce to do a voluntary review. Give us some details about what's going on there.
So in this ongoing case, basically what happened is that the Court of International Trade accepted a request by the Department of Justice for a voluntary remand of a couple of issues related to some appeals going on in the case. The issues concerned really three different things. One was around one of the mandatory respondents' valuation of plywood. One was around one of the mandatory respondents' valuation of HDF core. And then finally, there's a calculation called targeted dumping for two of these respondents, and they granted a voluntary remand on the way that the department calculated that targeted dumping.
All right. So what effect do you think this will have? I mean, this thing's been going on for 2 years now. How do you think this will impact the outcome?
Honestly, I don't think it's going to impact it greatly. First and foremost, there's really no equitable, no legal basis on which these issues should have been revisited in the first place. That being said, the Coalition for American Hardwood Parity, of which Mannington is a part, believes that it will again result in affirmative dumping margins for both Leo and Samling, the two mandatories that are affected in this. Mm-hmm. And then finally, the one that's interesting is the fact that they asked for this voluntary remand on the targeted dumping methodology. So basically, the methodology that was in place when the case went through was specifically adhered to the way the Commerce Department was calculating it at the time. The Department of Commerce has since tweaked and changed the way that they've calculated that targeted dumping, and so they're basically asking Commerce Department to adhere to the new direction and not the previous direction, even though the case followed the procedure at the time. So ultimately, all of this will shake out, Kemp, in the next 30, 45 days. But what's going on at the same time is the first annual review of the case. So we'll know right around the end of September, provided it doesn't get extended, what the preliminary rates will be after the first annual review. So it's a whole bunch of stuff going on. There's still a ton of uncertainty around what will happen, but ultimately we believe that we will see positive dumping margins, we will see positive margins in general, and ultimately it'll address the issues that we outlined in the case.
Actually, one of the scariest parts of this whole situation are those people that are bringing in Chinese-made engineered hardwood. They can get a retroactive penalty that could be very severe, right?
Yeah, the way the case works, the orders went into place in December of 2011, and from that time forward, there's a deposit rate in place, and it's roughly 4.5% in general. Well, you really don't know what your final rate will be, at least until the end of the first annual review, and even then you don't know because there's subsequent annual reviews for the next couple of years. So that 4.5% may be 10% at the end of the first annual review, and that incremental 6% or 5.5% is due back to day one.
Right. So, I guess one last question about this. This has been going on, like you say, since I think November of 10, several years. So how has this government action impacted the market?
Ultimately, it's placed some uncertainty around imports of Chinese engineered hardwood into the market. It's really market dependent, or I'll say regionally dependent. You still see a lot of it coming in on the West Coast. You still see a lot of it in some of the non-traditional flooring channels. But it's definitely placed some uncertainty out there, and people have looked for alternative sources of supply and have looked back towards domestic manufacturing. You look at the investments that we've made as a company, that Mulliken, that Somerset, that Shaw. I mean, everybody, Mohawk, everybody has been investing in domestic production, I think in part due to this case.
That's right. We've actually, in Floor Focus, covered both Somerset's and Mulliken's investments in U.S. manufacturing for this type product. And you guys have been making it over here for quite some time, haven't you?
Yes, sir, we have.
Where have you been investing your dollars in the last couple of years?
We've really been investing it in technology and developing new design capabilities. Rather than building a new plant or a new production line, we've built what I like to call our special effects lines that give us the ability to create very differentiated visuals at very competitive costs and have been phenomenally successful for us.
Well, Dan, I appreciate the update on this, since I knew you were an expert in this area, and I wanted to reach out to you. I've been talking to Dan Natkin, who's Director of Hardwood and Laminate with Mannington Mills, and you've been listening to Kemp Harr and FloorDaily.net.